Hello everyone, JR Wasabi here. In today's video, I will be talking about the upcoming item changes planned for the next patch. But before we begin, I would just like to remind you to like the video if you find it useful and also to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. Thank you and let's get right into it. Before we go into the changes, here are my thoughts on why Riot is changing or reworking some of the items in the upcoming patch. First, it is to allow them to be able to balance comps that involve attack speed using time as the new limiting factor. As talked about in my Bastion Rapid Fire guide, the scaling attack speed stall comp is an often abused comp in most sets and causes Riot issues in balancing them against the other comps. This time, they are going straight for the items. Second, it allows Riot to be able to balance comps that involve scaling health or mega tanks in general, such as Cho'Gath this set. With the same intention, they are also limiting aura items to only support items this time round. They are also removing backline damage from craftable items. Lastly, we can see that they are trying to balance the overall strength of items for different unit types. Our first change is for Redemption. A tier and a belt will now form Spirit Visage, which is scaled down craftable Anima Visage. Because of this change, Anima Visage has been removed from the game. Spirit Visage provides 15 mana, 150 health, and 10% durability for the holder, and restores 2.5% missing health every second for the holder. There is higher and faster healing, since the healing kicks in every second and provides a permanent 10% durability compared to Redemption. However, there is no more AoE aura to heal allies anymore. And with the loss of an aura, there is actually a loss of an invisible fourth item, as we usually place Redemption on a secondary tank to grant the healing aura on your main tank on top of the 3 main tank items. Because of that, I see this as an overall nerf to the item. This was needed to keep health scaling tanks like Cho'Gath from getting out of hand with any Anima Visage and Redemption healing. Our second change is for Runan's Hurricane. A bow and a cloak will now form a Kraken's Fury instead. Because of this change, the Category 5 augment has been disabled. Kraken's Fury has a passive that grants 3% AD every attack, and this stacks on for as long as the fight lasts. There is an increase of 25% AD granted to the holder, and unlike attack speed, there is no limit to AD on an unit. But it is of course gated by the length of the fight, depending on how many attacks can be made by the holder. However, there is a loss of backline damage as compared to Runan's Hurricane. I see this as a buff to the underused Runan's Hurricane, given that Kraken's Fury is a more general damage item and not dependent on a unit's on-hit effects. Furthermore, expect this to be an overused item. It will surely be paired together with Guinsoo's Rageblade, as every player loves an ever-scaling carry. Focusing on set 14, it may either amplify the effects of Marksman trait or make it obsolete altogether. Our last change for craftable item is for Static Shift. A tier and a bow will now form Void Staff instead. Because of this change, the Shock Treatment augment has been disabled. Void Staff grants a much higher 35 AP, but a slightly lower 10% attack speed. Its passive is also different, as attacks and magic damage stretch 30% of the target's magic resist for 3 seconds and is non-stacking. This stretch duration is lower than before, and the number of shredded targets is dependent on the unit's ability. On top of a loss of backline damage, there is also a loss of damage in general, since you will likely have to replace one of your item slots with this item. I see this as a nerf in general. Moving on to our item rework, Guinsoo's Rageblade, formed from a rod and a bow, is the first on the menu. Instead of granting 5% stacking AS every attack, it now grants 6% stacking attack speed every second instead. While it is not mentioned, I am speculating that it will be made a unique item like Blue Buff, so that only one green suit can be equipped for each unit. While the nerf is in the lower attack speed reached, since it is now capped by the length of the fight, there is actually more consistent attack speed scaling, as we know the green suit users usually start off with pretty low attack speed. Hence, this scaling is actually better early into the fight, while worse off late into the fight when your Greensu carries exponentially scale with attacks right now. However, while it is to be confirmed, if this attack speed continues to increase while the unit is stunned, it actually provides great utility for Greensu holders against crowd control abilities. As mentioned previously, I expect it to be paired well with Kraken's Fury for many AD carries. This is a decent buff in my opinion, even though I am not sure if it was intended to be so. The nerfs may be clearer next patch and could come in the form of nerfs to the Greensu users in general. Rework number 2 is on Sterak's Gauge, formed from a sword and a belt. There is now much higher front-loaded stats provided, 30% AD, 250 health, and 10% Omnivamp. This is definitely good news for bruiser and even tank units. At 60% health, rather than gaining max health and extra AD, it now gains a whopping 80% max health shield that decays over 4 seconds, further adding to the bruiser and tank utility. While there is a tiny nerf to the AD gain overall, this is nothing compared to the increased stats and tanking capabilities given. To me, it is definitely a giga buff and is surely the most buff item among the item changes, since this is one of the or the least used item in the game right now. Our last rework involves Guardbreaker. While still being formed from a glove and a belt, it has been renamed to Striker's Flail instead. This is because its ability no longer has to do with shields anymore. Its passive now grants 5% damage amp for 5 seconds upon critical strikes, hence Striker's Flail. This can stack up to 3 times. While this works better with a quick build, such as the one-shot Brand with Jeweled Gauntlets and Guardbreaker, there is lower overall stats from less attack speed and AP. Furthermore, it seems easier to proc Guardbreaker since abilities and attacks usually damages shields easily, given the abundance of shields in the game from items, artifacts, and abilities. Thus, I see this as a slight nerf to the item. Next up, we have 4 new artifacts. Some are new, while some of the items are the ones that are moved over from craftable items to artifacts. Flicker Blade is the old Greensu's Rage Blade, where attacks grant 5% stacking attack speed. However, there is additional effect that for every 5 attacks, 4% AD and 5 AP will be granted to the holder as well. While this helps to seemingly consolidate 2 items, Greensu and Kraken, into one item, the stats and effects granted does not seem too exciting or fantastic as an artifact. I think that more buffs may be required to the stats or passive. Next is Indomitable Gauntlet. If you are familiar with the Deep Roots Anomaly last set, this item makes the item holder behave exactly the same. On top of granting a whopping 450 health, 20 armor, and 20 magic resist, it drastically reduces holder move speed while granting 10% max health, stun immunity, and pulls their current target into melee range. Next up, we have the old Static Shift. Being an artifact now, it grants much higher stats of 20% attack speed and 25 AP. And its passive effect is increased from 35 to 50 plus 50% of holders' AP as bonus damage to 4 enemies every 3 attacks. While there is no more strap effect, there is much higher damage dealt to the backline if you can reach them. Furthermore, it can be paired with Void Staff for the strap effect and extra AP as well. Last, we have a new artifact similar to the augment, Titanic Hydra. It grants 15% AD, 15% attack speed, and 300 health, and holders' attacks deal 3% of their max health plus 25% of their AD as bonus physical damage to target and adjacent enemies. Expect this to be a broken item for bruisers as well. In conclusion, with these item changes, we expect store comms to perform worse given that the redemption aura has been removed. However, we expect players to be spamming Greensu, Gunblade, and Kraken's Fury together as AD carry items, which may actually be a possible buff depending on whether the Greensu holders are nerfed in the next patch. Also expect crit builds to be slightly weaker due to Guardbreaker's nerf. However, most importantly, we expect a return of the Bruiser meta, and even if it doesn't, expect so next set. While these changes are really exciting and may shake up the meta to some extent, it is not final until patch 14.5 is released next week. So do keep a lookout for my patch rundown video as well. Once again, if you have reached the end of the video, thanks for watching and I hope you have learned something from here. As always, if you find this video useful, I greatly appreciate if you can like the video and subscribe to my channel for more guides and gameplay videos. See you again. Bye bye.